In this first segment of Israel Prepares for Armageddon, we talked to you about some of the historical things that have happened to give us a proper appreciation for all that's gone before, so that we can understand where we are right now and what is getting ready to happen next. The last event we talked about in the previous segment was the 1967 Six Days War, often referred to in Israel by religious Jews as the War of Redemption. However, it did not turn out to be a war of redemption. Rather, it became a disappointment. Since Israel did not do what God instructed them to do, when I bring you into the land of promise, you are to utterly drive out the inhabitants of the land. Since Israel decided to do things her own way, reversals began to happen. A short 6 years after the incredible victory, when Israel looked invincible, the whole world was in awe of this tiny nation that could whip 42 million Arabs in 6 days, in 6 short days, almost tripling the size of the land that she controlled. 6 short years after this incredible victory, something else happened. Now, Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement in Israel. This is the day in the Old Testament when the high priest would go into the holiest of holies. The Day of Atonement is also known as the Day of Judgment in the land of Israel. This is the day when God looks at what you have done and judges you for the way you have lived and what you have done. In 1973, in October, on Yom Kippur, now this is normally a day when most of the soldiers leave the front lines, most of the people go to their relatives. It is their #1 holiday of the year. In the midst of that holiday, all of a sudden, attacks were perpetrated against the nation of Israel from every side. Israel was caught by surprise, unprepared. It looked like the nation of Israel was going down to defeat. It was a terrible day. And it was as though this was in fact the day of judgment on Israel for her disobedience. Mr. Moshe Dayan, who became a very famous figure at that particular time with the patch over his eye, he had been the hero of the 1967 war. Now all of a sudden his forces are reeling under the weight of the attack from Egypt in the south and from Syria in the north. He leaned against the wall and looked at Israel's prime minister at the time, Golda Meir, and said to her, "Golda, I fear for the third temple." It was a moving moment. However, in the midst of all that, there was a man brought out of retirement who had become the warrior of the modern nation of Israel. His name is Ariel Sharon. Because he didn't go along with some of the modern secular policies of the nation of Israel, he had been pushed out of the upper echelons of Israel's army and forced into retirement. However, all of the nation of Israel knew there was no commander like Commander Ariel Sharon. So while they teetered on the brink of defeat, Sharon came out of retirement, was given command over the most important army, the Southern Command, facing the powerful army of Egypt. He quickly struck through the Egyptian defenses, encircled behind them, went across the Suez Canal, and suddenly captured the road separating the Egyptian army from the land of Egypt. They were stranded. All of a sudden, the urgent calls went out. Ceasefire, ceasefire, time for a ceasefire. Russia pressured the United States. You must go to the United Nations. We must have a ceasefire right now. So the tragedy of the 1973 Yom Kippur War was somewhat reversed, but not before 2,500 Israeli soldiers died. Now that doesn't sound like much to us, but if you put that in American terms, it would be 2,500,000. If you compare our population to their population. It was a terrible setback for the nation of Israel. Nevertheless, they did survive. But Israel did not yet learn her lesson, because from then on, the promises of God pass. If you don't drive them out, they will be thistles in your eyes, they will be thorns in your sides. And so the Intifada came, when the continual terrorist attacks, bombings here, bombings there, family members gone, no security, no peace. You never know when the next bus is going to blow up. Those were the conditions that Israel lived under.